Hello and welcome to Miranda's Funky Scrapyarn hat workshop, where I will show you how you can knit this funky hat without dropping stitches. In this workshop I'm going to demonstrate to you how you can knit a hat with a scrap yarn side and a plain yarn side with a shared brim. And I'm going to show you how you can make it as easy as possible for you to design your own hats. I'm using scrap yarn, of course. One color for the brim. You can use that also for the other side, so you can continue with the brim color on the other side if you want to have it complete one color. Or another color or multiple colors for the other side of your tube. So basically my tube is going to look like scrap yarn, border, and the plain yarn for the other side. I'm going to use, of course, a circular knitting machine, what I use for my hats, and a pair of scissors, and your yarn needle, and that's it. So, heyo, let's go. Untangle your yarn so it's usable, and when they're all untangled, you can also untangle them on the go. You are ready to start your hat. I have been untangling all my scraps and I tie them together with a hair tie, the ends on one side and then the length on the other side. So I can easily see the different sizes of length. I need a real long one that fits 3 times around your machine to start with. So this is handy. And you can just pull out that piece of yarn you want, like this, and continue the knitting. There are 2 ways you can knit your hats. You can knit them knowing what size you are going to knit, but when you don't know how much scrap yarn you have, you knit just on the go. The formula is very simple. I'm knitting hats that are one side, shared brim, other side. So the tube is divided into 3 different parts. So for my hat, I'm going to knit scrap yarn, brim color, and color for the other side. The rows are exactly the same of those 3 parts. You can use the chart to do that. This is the most used chart. And this chart tells me that for a men's hat, I knit about 55 to 60 rows. This is single layered. In my country, it's some kind like a beanie. And my favorite pattern is to add a brim, and then when you reverse it, the brim is also the same on the other side, so you don't have a color change at the switching point. And then I want to knit another color on the other side. So when this says 55 to 60, I knit 55 to 60, 55 to 60, and 55 to 60 rows to get a man size hat with a brim you can fold. This is my favorite pattern. So this is how you play with that pattern. Do you want to make your hat exactly the same without a brim? You just skip this part and you knit 55 rows or 60 rows for one side and 55 rows for another side. So, but I'm demonstrating how you can calculate. It's very simple. You just add another, it looks like a lot, but it's not. Another exactly the same amount of rows for the brim in the middle. But when I'm knitting my scrap yarn hats, I'm going to knit with my scrap yarn. And when I'm finished or done, I know it never can be more than 60 rows. I fill in the amount here and knit the amount here and the same amount here. So I just knit on the go. I don't knit I'm going to make a men's size hat because maybe my yarn runs out earlier and then I have knitted 50 rows. And then I have to knit 50 rows here and 50 rows here. So I like to knit on the go. And that's what I'm going to do in this example. For this workshop, I'm going to use my Addy. I'm casting on with a piece of yarn that fits 3 times the circumstance of my machine. And I'm using a timer to show that I really can knit this easily in 1 hour. So let's start. The timer is already running. I'm not in a rush and I'm going to cast on with my working scrap yarn that fits 3 times around the machine for a cast on that will work when closing it later. I'm done and I'm knitting at least 1 row with this same color of yarn. That's why it has to be that long. I need to knit at least 1 round with the same piece of yarn. So I'm going to knit until my yarn is almost done. I have knitted almost 2 rounds and my tail is long enough that it touches the table, and that's the point I have to stop and put the yarn to the inside. It doesn't matter where you do this. But make sure the tail touches the table, that's important. And I'm going to grab my single strands and I'm putting it to the inside with a tail that is long enough that it touches the table. That is really important. And I put it into my feeder in the same spot where the other tail is also. When you put them in the same spot, you knit every needle. Start knitting. Knit very careful. When you pass a change of the yarn, you have to be aware that the loops has to be around the needles correct, all the way down. When your yarn is finished, take it out of your feeder and grab another piece of yarn and put it into the feeder. Make always sure that tails touches the tables and that you put them between the same 2 needles in the same spot. That's very important. And then you continue knitting. Knit slow so you can prevent mistakes and can prevent that you run out of yarn. Make always sure tails are touching the table. When your tail is long enough that it touches the table, switch to another color and put it in the same spot between the same 2 needles. And continue knitting slow, and especially at the color changes you have to look carefully that the loops are in place. They have to be around the 2 little teeth. Sorry, I'm Dutch. And this is basically what you keep continuing until you ran out of yarn or reach the amount of rows you need until you start with the brim. Always between the same 2 needles in the same spot. That's it. Don't overthink and watch that everything is in place and knit slow. Till long enough that it touches the table. Put it to the inside. Take another piece of yarn. Put it into the feeder, into the inside, making sure the tail touches the table in the same spot between the same 2 needles. And continue knitting until your yarn ends and touches the table. This is a color change point and I have to help. When you continue knitting without helping, you mess up. So that's it. So I will continue doing this until I am going to change to the brim. I'm not going to tie anything. I'm doing that after taking my project off the machine. Same spot between the same 2 needles. It's surprisingly soothing to do, and your hat still will be finished in no time. and you're using your scraps instead of throwing them away to make fantastic, unique hats. And it's real handcraft. So I'm speeding up the video so you can see the process. And now I'm done. I have knitted 50 rows. I'm putting my scrap yarn tail to the inside. And now I am taking my chart and I'm writing down 50 rows for the first part. For the brim I have to knit 50 rows, so I change to the color for my reversible brim. I'm using black for the brim because that's very nice, contrasting with the scrap yarn. I'm putting the tail to the inside because it's just for joining, and I'm finding the start. And I continue knitting, making sure everything is in place. And I'm going to knit 50 rows with my black yarn. Make sure that all the loops are in place. This is a very handy tool. It's from the same brand. I don't know where to buy it because somebody sent it to me, but it's a very great tool. I have a similar tool for my antique sock knitter, but then an antique version made of copper. So I'm going to knit my 50 rows and I see you back when I have knitted them. I'm almost done with knitting my 50 rows of the brim. And after 50 rows I'm going to change color to the plain color side of the other side of my head. I'm cutting my yarn long enough that it touches the table. And I'm going to put it to the inside between the last and the first needle. And I'm taking my plain color yarn. I'm going to find the edge, the end. And of course it gets tangled when you prepare it. It's all within the 1 hour project time. So I'm going to put my yarn tail to the inside, long enough that it touches the table, making sure it's between the same two needles, and then I'm going to knit 50 rows with this color. And when I'm done knitting my 50 rows, I'm going to stop and I'm going to cut my yarn long enough that it fits one time around my machine. And then I'm going to cast off my head as usual. Taking a yarn needle, knitting 3/4 of my needles without yarn, so the stitches will be released and I have the right angle to pick them up. So I'm going to pick up my stitches. This is my last knitted, and on the right I will find my first and my second and my third, and I'm going to pick up all 46 or 48 stitches when you use a Sentroknittingmachine. All my stitches are from the machine now. My tube is a bit tangled because I rolled it up, so I have to untangle it before I can stretch it. And then I am simply going to stretch it. Because your yarn tails are that long, nothing will get loose. Oh, this one is not supposed to stick through this. And when I have stretched my work, I'm going to finish off the end where my needle is still hanging by simply closing all the stitches by pulling on my yarn tail. I'm just using a half knot to close. And then you can choose to put it to the inside or to use it to close both ends together. You can do whatever you like. Then you turn your work inside out, because now we are going to connect all those yarn tails to each other. The first color change from the top is the first pair we have to join. I'm just using a double knot. And the tension is the key, so you have to try to get the same tension as you're knitting for a invisible join. And then we are going to look for our next pair to close. The end of my brim color is the first half of the pair I have to close, and the next color is just next to that. So I have to connect those two yarn tails. All tails are always in pairs. So now I know, this is very long. Now I know that the next color is the blue one. So I have to follow that blue one till I find the other tail of the blue one. It's not here. I have to find that blue tail. Here it is. And next to that blue tail is the tail of the next color, and I just have to join those. Now I have to find the next yellow yarn tail. So here it is, and on the left of that tail you find the next tail of the next color. In this case it's also yellow, but a different one. And then I have to find the next yellow tail. And I find it next to the pink tail. And I have to join those two. I forgot to show you the time. The next yarn tail has to be this pink one, so I have to find that one. Here it is, next to the pink one. I have to join those. And because you follow every color, you go in a spiral all the way to the end. Just follow the yarn color to find the end. And that end you are going to join to the beginning of the next color. And those tails are a pair already. I'm going to join this nice blue one, and I have to find the next tail of this blue one. And here it is, next to the light pink one. They're already a pair. And when you go down in a spiral, you never miss a pair. So I will speed up the video so you can follow the process. And after knotting my last knot and ending with my cast on yarn, I'm going to turn my head inside out again. And then my work looks like this. I'm going to tuck in all those yarn tails and I'm going to find my cast on tail. It's light pink. And then I'm going to close my head as I always do with my reversible heads, making sure that all the tails are to the inside and also the rib side rolled to the inside, so it will close very neat. I'm going to close it as I always do. I'm just knotting the casting on or casting off piece of yarn with a half knot around my needle. And then I'm going to pull my yarn all the way through and stick my yarn to the inside, let it come out somewhere else, pull through and cut. And then I have a new start for a new head with scrap yarns. And on the opposite end, I also tuck the end to the inside. And my reversible head is finished. I only have to tuck one end into the other. And there is my funky scrap yarn head with a folded brim. And when you turn it to the other side, you have a plain knitted head with a folded brim also. When you look it a little bit closer, it's a bit funky also. And this way you can knit a head from scraps just within 1 hour. And the pattern is always very unique. It's real handcraft. And when you continue knitting, you just make it as long as a scarf. So this is all made within an hour. Thank you for watching this video. Give me a thumb up and join my channel to miss nothing in the future. See also the description of this video for a lot of useful links. And if you want to make a donation, see my PayPal link also in the description. Have a nice day, stay safe, with love from Holland. Bye bye.